we're back. Episode 99 of the Hibs Ramble. And some may say I'm joined with my favourite rambler. I'll let you maybe decide if that's correct or not, but this evening I'm joined by Craig. How are we doing?
I'm doing good, mate. 99 episodes later, eh?
I know, who'd have thought it?
I've only been on about 4 of them.
I mean, maybe have more than 99 listeners now. Maybe.
Well, here's hoping.
Maybe.
We've been working hard at it.
For those that are listening, it is audio only. This week, our resident editor, Liam, is on holiday, and that's probably all we'll say about him. He doesn't deserve any more airtime other than that. So
neither of us can be arsed learning how to do the other stuff. So we just make sure that he does it.
Correct. Yes, Craig, we'll just get right into it, mate. Quite a few things have happened since you've been last on, and quite a few things have been on since we last had an episode that I know the listeners will be dying for, our 1999 quiz that I teased last week, and I know you're looking forward to it, expecting full marks for a good man like yourself.
That's my era, mate.
We're going to end on that. And there's quite a few things that we're going to chat through first. Now we'll talk obviously about the transfer window and the Malky Mackay video regarding the recruitment and stuff like that as well. But where we always start is obviously the previous game, so we'll get right into it. Now we'll obviously talk through individual performances, Craig, as the episode goes on. But team selection came out, and I've been looking forward to you being on because of, not only because I've missed you, but because of your tweet around a midfield three of Newell, Triantis and Kwon making you potentially reach for the bleach. So when you saw that team selection, did you have the bleach at hand and were you ready to go based on performance, or were you actually willing to give it 90 minutes and see how it played out?
Nah, I had the Domestos poured, I had it sitting on ice. That's just a more tongue-in-cheek thing that I put on Twitter the other night. I think the starting 11 just now almost picks itself, maybe with the exception of Kieran Bowie, based on who's out of it. I think it was pretty obvious that with Kwon and Triantis coming in, they're going to be mostly starting. I don't know the ins and outs of the deals that we've got with Celtic and Sunderland, but you'd like to think that there's some sort of agreement in there that they'll start as often as they can. And then obviously Joe Newell's not going to get dropped, being the captain. So I was willing to give it a shot. I think, like I said, the team almost picks itself just now, rather regrettably, due to the personnel, maybe with the exception of Bowie. Because Rudy's had a good start to the season. I know we'll touch on him. He never had a great game on Sunday. But until we get guys like Hoylett, Ewan fully fit and up to speed, Bowie getting up to speed, I think the team's much of a muchness than now as it is, to be honest.
Yeah, no, you're completely right. And it's terrible for me to start off by jumping straight into the game. So apologies to all our listeners for that, because I had fully intended to pay my utmost respects to Sol Bamba's family due to the unfortunate passing of the big man. So yes, we'll take a wee sidestep away from the game and we'll just reminisce on, for me, Craig, what was a absolutely tremendous player, in my opinion, growing up. I thought he was criminally underrated when he was at the club as well, and underappreciated. I had the pleasure of bumping into him a few times where I worked at the time when he was at the club. And honestly, an absolute gent. He would, regardless how busy I was at work, i.e. like the customers queuing and stuff, if I wanted to, speak 5-10 minutes, he would wait on that queue disappearing and I was free, and then he would give me the time of day and he would chat and stuff like that as well. So a really, really sad loss for football, not just Hibs. Junior Hoyle obviously paid his thoughts as well online over the weekend. Craig, what was your overriding kind of thoughts and emotions towards Sol Bamba as a player when he was at Hibs?
It was, his debut obviously was quite a memorable one because it was the same. Obviously, him and Derek Radden signed on the same day, and He started centre mid, I think, home to Dundee United. And he actually ended up getting sent off that day. But that's a kind of memorable day because it was Riordan's first game back, and I'd never seen a reaction for a player like that coming on as a sub. Like the ground sold out because Riordan was back at Hibs. Kind of something like we'd heard for the 8th. Not that I'm comparing it in any way, but the last time you'd hear about that was the 80s when George Best signed it. Hibs sold out based on a player. But just sad, mate. Just another. And the thing is, as well, is that it hits you a wee bit more. Like you didn't think that when you're watching them play, because I mean he was what 2008 he would have signed, so I was 17 when he signed. And then when I seen obviously the news that he passed, and it's like 39-year-old, so I'm like fucking 39. Like that's only 6 years away for me now. So you didn't realise at the time that he was only 6 years older than me when he played for Hibs.
Yeah.
But it just sad me. That's both him and Liam Miller for that sort of era passed away far too young. And obviously,
I mean, we did during that period. We didn't have many great players, but Liam and Sol were probably two, arguably the best players that we had in and around that era. Obviously, excluding Riordan. So,
well, that's
you're
6
right,
months, mate.
devastating.
That's 6 months under John Hughes with Bamba, Stokes, Zamama, Riordan. I think that was when Ian Murray had came back. Watherspoon had broken through. Fucking Kevin McBride was a baller in the middle of the park. Like that 6 months when Yogi took over to the Christmas, we were class. We were unbelievable at times in that period. Mind we went away to Motherwell and played Motherwell. We beat them 3-1, but it could have been about 12. We'd absolutely leathered them. But it's just a shame, mate. And obviously you see he was probably criminally underrated, not just when he was at Hibs, but probably after Hibs. He forged himself a relatively good career, kind of Leicester and Cardiff, and even the fact that he managed to recover from his cancer diagnosis initially. I know his wife said that she's seen him sort of fight it head on, so I don't know if he's maybe, if his cancer's returned and he's relapsed, and he's obviously lost his fight due to that. But it takes a strong set of balls to not only recover for cancer in the first place, but make it back to effectively the elite level of football in England.
Yeah.
So it just goes to show you, and I know that one of the guys that's in one of my group chats, Callum, he felt it quite bad because Callum's got a good story about how when he and his wife got married, Bamba was just there. He was in the area, and he ended up spending, like you said, giving up his time. He actually ended up spending time at Callum's wedding. So I think that just goes to show you the type of character he is. Callum genuinely couldn't speak highly enough of him. Said that he gave everybody the time of day, even on their wedding day. So it's a sad loss to. Obviously, you feel it more when it's one of a player that's played for your own club, but clearly a loss to his obviously his friends, his family, and our thoughts are with him as they try and get over the news.
For sure, yeah. So apologies for not covering that off first. Obviously, since the last time we recorded as well, yet again, Yuan has suffered racial abuse again. If I'm being completely honest, we've spent so much time talking about that, and I feel like it's a broken record saying that we're against it, and we stand obviously with Ellie, and our thoughts are obviously with him as well. I know it's a completely different thing in comparison to the topic with Bamba, but for someone in 2024 to still be suffering the level of abuse he and other players at the club have suffered is obviously unforgivable, really.
Yeah, we've spoke about in the past, mate. It's a societal issue. The toxicity that exists on social media overall is horrible. Especially folk, and it turns out this laddie that a 15-year-old laddie, like my laddie's 14, kind of it almost, to me, it almost seems like this type of racism and that skipped, because obviously you hear about how bad it was in the 70s and the 80s. It's almost skipped mine and your generation, in a way, and because of the rise of social media, and obviously that's been quite flippant saying that's no skipped, but I don't remember ever in my teenage years having thoughts like that.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
always
It
kind
was
of,
obviously, I get the point that you're making. It was still huge. It was still a
yeah, but
societal issue, but to the level where it potentially is now
it's,
reaching because of social media, it's obviously
uh,
heavily increased. Yeah.
and it's just it doesn't help when um you've got folk accusing LA being lazy and being disinterested when you've got folk sending them messages, and then you've got fucking the laddie whose account it came from. It turns out it wasn't even him that done it. So what
Yeah.
kind of pals have you got that are going to fucking dob you to try and do something like that to you? But it goes without saying, mate. We've seen it, whether it be slyly or not. The connotations and words that are used to describe black players in particular are always the same: strong, athletic, oh, but they're clumsy, they're a bomb scare, they're this and they're that. It's absolutely abhorrent, and we can only hope that somehow it just dies off. But
Yeah.
like I said, it's not just an individual football directed problem, mate. It's a societal problem.
And
And
obviously, talking about it on, regardless, we were joking at the beginning about how many listeners that we have, regardless of how many people tune in, talking about it and giving it that platform will hopefully change someone's mindset and educate someone. So,
it's
yeah,
a double-edged sword, mate, because you almost didn't want to acknowledge it in the hope that if you ignore it, it'll go away.
yeah,
But the more you try and ignore it, the more of a problem it actually becomes. And being able to challenge these things head on. And I know the club have taken action and banned whoever it is, which is good. But there's a part of me that also feels that when you've got a person in the position of power at the club that we do, with his history, do
I
you know what
know,
I mean? Without
I know,
without
I know.
dragging all that up again, and
Yeah, which will not. But yeah, two strong points that we wanted to discuss. Two strong
yeah,
points that we wanted to make clear. Obviously, different ends of the spectrum for obviously obvious reasons, but both Hibs players, very very good, talented Hibs players, and we both wanted to kind of give those topics the time of day. Now we'll obviously circle back to the match. Now, Craig, you mentioned at the beginning when I was asking you about the selection that you kind of feel like the selection is forced and it kind of picks itself at the minute. Um, Obviously with the midfield three, for example, bringing in those two types of players, and then Joe Neal being the third player, which means obviously being captain, that could potentially be our long-term midfield three. For me, I'm not sure if the balance is there. Obviously, they've only had one training session, but I don't know if you noticed, but at the weekend I noticed obviously the fullbacks were high and wide. Tryantis was pretty much, other than a couple of mazy runs that he went on, he just kind of anchored in front of the back two, because obviously the fullbacks were pushing up. And David Gray has made it known that he doesn't really want a six that is mobile. He wants them just to be there to tidy up, to clean up, and can he just let everyone kind of play. And we were probably at Nectar's, we are probably hindering him the last time he was here, asking him to maybe do too much in a role that maybe didn't suit him. So, kind of where I'm going with this, Craig, is how do you see, whether it be the starting 11 that you've already alluded to kind of picks itself at the minute due to injuries and people not up to speed yet, how do you see David Gray looking to set up a side? Because I feel like the reason I ask the question is, in a lot of our games, I feel like I've seen different parts of different David Gray sides. And I'm not saying we're going to see it all come together as early as we are in his tenure with not having the players that he wants yet at the minute, i.e. them all being up to speed. But what kind of David Gray Hibs side do you think that will look like in the end?
I think the signing of Triantis gives us a huge clue. Like you say, he doesn't want somebody to be overly mobile in there and covering hundreds of blades of grass. You didn't want him out chasing down a right winger because it leaves a massive hole in the middle. I'd actually think that the signing of someone like him actually gives someone like Ekpiteta a bit more freedom in terms of someone to give the ball to. I think I've spoken about it often enough how frustrated I get with Joe Newell. But that's because when he's getting the ball, he's going and collecting it and sitting beside the centre halves. Someone actually I'm remiss if who it was. It might have been the guy that does the analysis stuff. Who I think he does bits with the Observer.
Yeah.
He put a clip out Triantis in the 6 against Motherwell last season, the last home game of last season, and the more I watched it, the more frustrated I got. And that Joe Newell, whenever he got the ball, he ran into spaces where the ball carrier was, and then he goes and runs behind an opposition player into a position where he can't receive the ball. Whereas I felt on Sunday, he was. I think it's. I hate to use the term, but it's almost going to be the way I see the Grey team as a 6 and 2 8s. I don't think we'll see almost like 2 6s and a 10 in front with the 2 wide men. I think it'll be very much a 4-3-3, but with a sitter rather than a attacking midfielder, with the emphasis on the Newell and Kwon or whoever it may be to go and support the wide men.
Where do you think that'll leave players like Josh Campbell, Dylan Levitt, and those types of players that we have that previously we were slotting them into 6s or 8s or 10s, whereas now, because I agree with exactly what you just said, I do feel like it'll be a 6 and 2 8s, and you could see that with the amount of time Kwon and Newell spent further up the park and spent more box to box. I know Nectar that went on a couple of amazing runs, but where do you think that leaves the other midfielders that previously we've tried to slot in? Do you think this is now maybe David Gray just saying, right, enough's enough, I've seen enough from yous, this, it's not working, this is what I want, you either need to adapt to that or you'll be on the bench?
I think it's maybe came to bitting him in the backside a wee bit with how heavy he went on Josh Campbell in the summer. He made it abundantly clear that Campbell was going to be a focal point of the team, whether it be a 6 or an 8 or a 10 or whatever, when I think we all know that technically he's not good enough to perform any of the roles, really. I mean, he's great at arriving in the box and to grab goals, but I think in this day and age, you need a bit more for that. You look at the output that Ellie had last season, like double figures, goals and assists, and that still wasn't good enough. And I think with guys like Levitt, I think we can safely say that probably Luke Amos and Kenna are out of the picture. Malky's I know we're going to touch on it, but Malky's interview for me in that aspect was quite telling in what he said about players getting game time and being able to go. And I think you could probably read between the lines to see who actually fits into that category. But for those three, Amos, Levitt, and Kenna, I don't see probably too much. Probably the only one with a real future I would say is Campbell, but that would be maybe more of a 60-65 minutes if we're a goal behind and we're trying to chase a game. If we're trying to see a game out, I don't think we see him because he's not that type of player.
Yeah. And
then obviously with the signing of Iredale as well, that opens up the possibility of going to a back three.
Yeah.
But I think with a back three, it really hinders us in where we can play the likes of Ellie, Hoylett, Boyle, Rooney, especially if you play a back three and you're playing Triantis, you're effectively playing 6 defenders right off the bat.
Yeah.
So
you mentioned about going behind, and that's something that we've not done the last couple of games anyway. We've obviously took the lead, and David Gray alludes to it in his post-match interview. But before we took the lead at the weekend, obviously Kelly had a great chance at the post. We seemed a bit all over the place at the back post. Miko obviously has a wonder strike for the halfway line, which is obviously incredibly close to going in. But other than that, for me anyway, watching it, I felt very bored watching the first half. I felt like it was very uneventful other than those 2 instances. What did you make of the first half? And going in at half time, what do you think we maybe needed to tweak to try and get a wee bit more out of the playing squad that we had on the pitch at that point?
I think I've done enough of these episodes now where I didn't like to sort of thingy for excuses, but that pitch was fucking horrendous. Like, it really was. Even when you see it looking at it, it's like it's fucking white, almost in patches. Obviously, I train at the Orium every week and play on Astros all over Scotland. I say Scotland, like Edinburgh and Glasgow and that, nearly every week. And I don't ever seem to have any of the issues that the professionals do in terms of the ball moving. Like you can see the bounces are weird. You can never seem to play a pass along the ground that's fucking dry, what it seems as anything. And I hate making excuses, but it must have been torrid for boys like, for guys like Newell and Quan to want to get on the ball and move it forward, for Boyle to get the ball down and take on the fullback when they can't.
Yeah.
Because the surface doesn't allow for that sort of stuff to happen. But it's the same as you, mate. I'm quite bored, obviously, with the understanding that the pitch wasn't great. I'm not really understanding yet. When you say what a David Gray team looks like, I'm not quite understanding what I know, and the thing is, he hated the word, but the philosophy, like what do we look like as a team going forward? I'm not really asked what we look like as a team going back the way. But going forward, is it, do we want to get the wingers high and wide? Do we want to get crosses into the box to Miko? Do we want to get, these 2 8s pushing up to almost make a 5 in the box and we're attacking? Like, I'm no, it is early days, but I'm still no 100% sure what we're seeing. And that goes back to I felt the same at the Dundee game.
Yeah.
It almost seems like we're just setting up in a way just to play. And it seems very, very rigid at times. Obviously different levels of player and quality, but watching the Celtic Rangers game on Sunday, the way that Celtic players move on and off the ball is very fluid. But I can't quite see that from us just yet. But I'm willing to give it time. But then there's only so much time we can give if we're not picking up the results that we need.
Yeah, I think the frustration thing that David Gray will have is obviously how many games we're into the season before the window even closes, and then now that it is closed, he'll be thankful that he now knows what he's got to work with. And we've got the international break, then St Johnstone, then I think there's like another break straight for that before we play
it's the semi-final
Rangers.
Weekend.
So
quarter-final weekend. Sorry.
You would like to think that between now and ultimately the beginning of October, he'll know where we are, starting 11, everything will be a little bit more fluid, not to the level of obviously Celtic, but you'd like to think we would be in a stronger position. Yeah. You touched on obviously the pitch there, and you touched on players that potentially struggle on that pitch as well, to which I completely agree. It did look like that. One person that has not struggled in previous visits to Rugby Park is Joe Newell, with a couple of goals and a couple of appearances at Rugby Park. Don't really know where to start with it, to be honest. So, cross, shot, meant it, not meant it? What's your take on it? And more importantly, how important do you think that goal was at that time, regarding when you consider how poor that first half was?
There's the immediate cynic in me that's like, fucking hell, how lucky is that? But then the more you see it, the way that the shot corner's actually taken.
It's like it's taken to find that angle.
Yeah, I think there's an element of that's something that they've worked on at training. And if he can get the right, I mean, it's one of those ones where if he underhits that or overhits that, even a touch, the goalie catches it or it goes out for a goal kick. So he's caught it absolutely sweet, but he's put it in a perfect area where the keeper can't quite get it. And obviously I can't recall who it was coming in at the back post anyway. But the way that he celebrated as well leads me to believe that it's something that they've actually worked on, and it's not just a speculative, I'm putting a ball into an area. And that's the thing with Newell as well. We know that he's got such a good left foot that he maybe did put it exactly where he wanted it, but I'm thinking it's a move straight off the training ground, and it was important because, like you say, the first half was piss poor. And, barring Miko's speculative shot, I know Quan had one for outside the box as well, that the keeper got down to, but there wasn't much to go by. And I just think it gave the fans a wee bit of a lift as well to actually go ahead away from home.
Yeah.
Especially
huge for the squad.
A place like Rugby Park, where I think I seen somebody put in a group chat the other day, and I've never, no fact checked it because I couldn't be arsed going that far back, but we've never beaten a Derek McInnes team at home.
That wouldn't surprise me.
whether that be Aberdeen
Aye.
or Kilmarnock.
Aye. Anywhere the away side. Nah, it wouldn't surprise me, mate, to be honest. Obviously, after the Jonio goal, Triantis turns into peak pot noodle Ronaldo with the blonde highlights in his hair and he's mazy and then hits the bar. Unfortunately, he done that a couple of times at the weekend, and he even said in his post-match interview that he was surprised, but hopefully he can get a wee bit more of that. But
He's a
touching on
big
the
power,
point,
mate. He's a big, powerful laddie. Like I know we're talking about him not being mobile and that's probably a bit harsh. But because of his size, you wouldn't think he could get about the park that well. But obviously, when he gets going, he got going at some
you're not
speed, and he
pushing him
had
off lightly, aye.
no, and he still had good control of the ball as well. It's not as if he was fucking booting it in front of himself and chasing after it.
Yeah,
He still had relatively good close control of the ball.
yeah. And then naturally, a Derek McInnes side tries to hit back and come back at us. They hit the post for the second time in the match, and the reason why I asked you earlier on about a David Gray side, and I'm glad you touched on phases, not necessarily phases they play, but philosophy and how we play, is defensively we looked very, very narrow. And it looked like at times Kelly were trying to catch us in the full back area where Beta high and wide and Miller high and wide. And then when they weren't high and wide, defensively we looked really, really narrow. So I guess the question that I have for you regarding that is, what do you think David Gray will try and implement to stop our back line being so exposed? Do you think Triantis will be that answer consistently, or do you think he will try and like prevent Miller or Cadden and Abita from pushing up as high?
It's difficult, mate, because one of obviously all the positions are important, but you can't have a successful side without a successful defence. And we've ultimately brought in a new goalie and two new starting centre halves. Whether Ekpiteta and O'Hora and Bursic are the ones, whether their ability is good enough or not, that's no, that they still need time to build up an understanding with each other. And there was an instance in the second half, I think, where Ekpiteta took one in the jaw because Bursic was too slow off his line and he was hesitant. You could see it. He was a bit, I don't know if I should stay or go. And I don't think that puts confidence in your centre halves. For me, you want your goalie to just be fucking, if anything that comes in that box, it's mine.
Yeah.
And he needs to be almost clear it, like if it was his granny in front of him, fucking knocking her clean out to get the ball. You can't be hesitant because not only does it put the fear into your centre halves in your defence, it lets the opposition go, hold on a minute, this boy's a bit ropey. With regards to Albita, I've no idea what's going on with him because he's obviously player of the year last season, players player of the year last season, and he started off this season and for the standards that he'd set last season and what was ultimately a pretty shite season for us. The standards have dipped, whether that's because he kens that Stevenson's away, so that position's fully his. Hopefully the signing of Iredale will give him a wee kick up the backside. But I think with the defence specifically, it's just going to take time. Weirdly, in time is something that you didn't get in football. So
yeah.
Hopefully this break will give them enough time to work together. Maybe even get a bounce game at East Mains or whatever in the interim period to let them just work on that structure a wee bit more.
Yeah, and you touched on Jordan Abita there as well. That penalty that he gave away, stonewall penalty for me. I'm pretty sure you agree with that. As soon as I saw it happen, it was just Rangers at home all over again, is what it reminded me of. And like you said, I don't know if that's confidence or if he's just started and just where he's at, maybe a lapse in concentration. But for me, that kind of defending is just amateurish at best. Like you wouldn't get that level at kids level, in my opinion. And the fact that I'm sure it's Ekpiteta is coming over, we would have had it covered. And if you think about it, we see that out if he doesn't make that, and then we come away with 3 points. Do you think if that had happened, getting away with the 3 points, that would have overshadowed how poor a performance it was? I've seen real different opinions on the performance at the weekend. Some, I mean, straight after the match, similar with you and Mark, being very strong in regards to how poor it was. Mark even more so. But then I saw a lot of people online saying, it was a start, it's a building block. There was a couple of good, strong performances in there. So there was a real contradictory online regarding the overall performance. So do you think that would have papered over the cracks, or do you think it was more of the squad needed those 3 points, get away for Killie, and then rebuild again?
That's one of those ones where if we'd have won 1-0, no many folk are talking about the performance, because it's one of them that you go, just fucking get the 3 points and get back up the road. And it's weird in that for me the performance was poor, but there was individually good performances within it. So it wasn't a team. It was a team poor performance with smatterings of good performances in there. I do think that it's one of those things as well. Like with Rudy, he's an 18-year-old laddie. He's going to have days where he can't trap a bag of cement. That's naturally just going to happen. With Bowie still getting up to full fitness, Boyle again didn't have a great game. Miko, Barry's shot, didn't really have much else to go on. But then the midfield played well.
Yeah.
And then I seen that there's the clips going around as well about how every Kilmarnock attack on Sunday involved Lewis Miller, but I thought Miller was actually all right. Other than a couple of shaky moments, Ekpiteta and O'Hora were all right. They dealt with the physical threat of Vassell quite well. So again, it's one of those ones where it was. I think it's more the passages of play and going forward that we weren't great, but individually within that, there wasn't players that were, like I said, bar maybe the attacking three.
Yeah.
The rest were all right.
It'll be interesting to see how much game time Kieran Bibby gets away with the Scotland squad, considering he's only really been playing 30 minutes here or there for us. And
very surprised he never started. I thought Sunday would have been the time for him to start.
Maybe the Astro played a part in the decision. I don't know. I thought the exact same, mate. I thought he would have started, and he obviously came on. So did both the Caddens. Where do you think we could potentially see this Hibs side again come, like say St Johnstone or when we play Rangers? What do you think that starting 11 will look like? So to kind of come full circle before we kind of close off on this match, you mentioned the 11 picks itself. Where do you see us improving that starting 11 hypothetically, based on who we have out or the subs that we have making an impact at the minute?
Well, you look at the front three. You've got Ewan, Hoylett, and Bowie. They can interchange with the three that we've got just now, and on paper, the six of them on paper going forward makes for really interesting and exciting combinations. Whether it be Bowie up front with Ewan and Hoylett either wing, you've got Boyle and Miko with Ewan coming off the wing that we were successful to a relative extent under Lee Johnson as well. So it gives Gray more options as well. More importantly, and Ellie's probably game time's going to be managed, but I wouldn't want to be a St Johnstone player at 60, 65 minutes in 2 weeks, 0-0, and seeing him come on. Or seeing Boyle come on for Bowie. Do you know what I mean? Depending on what Gray wants to do. I just think it gives him a lot more options, and it's actually quite hard to pinpoint, because you could argue that, barring Rudy at the moment, Miko and Boyle haven't really done much either to justify a start.
Yeah.
So
and then you've got, like, say, obviously Nicky Cadden as well. We can come down that left side and add something else. Yeah,
I wouldn't expect to see Nicky Cadden anything more than a squad player. When you look at the Ewan and Hoylett ahead of him, in terms of an attacking, I think Cadden's one of those more wide midfielders. Rather than, Ewan and Hoylett will face up a full back and get at them. Cadden is more of a midfielder who will maybe hit the box for deep, rather than try and get down the byline, take the full back on and get the ball in the box.
Do you think we could see, again, touching on David Gray's not necessarily style of play, but what a David Gray side looks like. Do you think when we play Rangers in a couple of weeks, we could end up switching from a 4-3-3 and going 3-5-2 and having both captains on either side, and then having somebody like Miko and Bowie up top and just kind of getting rid of the whole wide men and having just more wider options in regards to fullbacks instead of wingers?
Possibly, but I do think that again, the 3-5-2 in a way. When you think when we played it when we were successful with it under Stubbs, we had Gray and Stevenson who were quite attacking wing backs, who were able to get up and down the park. We had a midfield three that were, you had your McGeoch type with this, who was in effect a sitter at times, and then Five and McGinn were just bombing forward and bombing forward. But I think the personnel that we've got just now doesn't really allow for an attacking 3-5-2.
Yeah.
And with the situation that Rangers find themselves in at the minute, I wouldn't want to be going to Ibrox and let's just sit back and sit back and sit back. Like, they're getting more fragile, and especially after the doing that they got on Sunday.
It'll still be Hampden that we play them at as well, so surely that'll give us
No,
an advantage as well.
It's at Ibrox.
Is it?
Because they're back at Ibrox for the cup game.
Are they? I thought there wasn't a date, so apologies for that. Moving on from the game, we've obviously spoke a lot in the last couple of minutes regarding newer players that have came into the squad, which takes us nicely on to obviously the transfer window's closed since the last time we recorded. Liam had his wee man out ready to go for Luke McKibben signing, but obviously, unfortunately, that happens. I'm going to guess your thoughts on it will be the same as mine, Craig, regarding the fact that ultimately, at the end of the day, we were outbidded by an absolute giant, and ultimately it was his boyhood club. And I think if it wasn't them that were in for him, we probably would have managed to secure the deal. And the fact that the club were willing to pay 800 grand plus, depending on bonuses and fees and stuff, it shows a real sign of ambition and intent as well.
Yeah, I think, the club, whether it be, Ian Gordon, Ben Kensel or whatever, take a lot of flack for a lot of stuff at the minute. But I don't think for 1 second you can say that, whether it be Johnson or Montgomery, that they've not been backed. And now David Gray, they've not been backed in getting the players that they want. The structure, you talk about a sporting director setting the philosophy, but the head coach is picking the players. I didn't understand quite how that marries together. If the manager has to have, it's his targets and his sign off. I do think if you're implementing that structure, that there does need to be an almost, it doesn't matter who the coach is, in effect. Obviously, they need to want the player as well, but it's more above that signs it off rather than the head coach. But every target that Gray has wanted that we've been able to get, we've got. And like you say with McKibben, that was just one of those ones where, like you say, if Celtic didn't come in for him, he's probably a Hibs player now.
Yeah, and you mentioned types of players, and you mentioned David Gray getting the players he wants as well. These are both comments that Malcolm Mackay makes reference to in his interview that came out. Now, for me, you don't make an interview like that unless there is grumblings or you potentially think you've maybe failed in the window, or you don't do that if everything's went your way. Is the point I'm trying to make?
I think that's purely off the back of not signing McKibben.
Yeah,
in my opinion, because again, I'm not really bothered that we never got him in terms of who we were bidding against, or even if Dundee didn't want to sell him. Like, it's not a case of because we're Hibs, we feel that we should just be able to go and get a player like that. It doesn't work like that. We've not had the recent history to be able to do something like that. But it was more, there was a comment for the evening news boy that covers Hibs, and he said it wasn't about the player, positionally it wasn't about the player, it was about what he represents. And I'm a bit like, what relevance is that? And they keep talking about how, that's Malky Mackay keeps referencing, we need characters, we need the right character. you
The
didn't want
irony in that statement alone is laughable. But yeah, I'll let you continue.
you didn't want a team full of guys that you'd go for a pint with. You want a wee every team. You want a wee snarling arsehole in there that's going to ruffle feathers and it's going to wind folk up and it's going to annoy folk. I mean that interview is I know nothing at the highest level about how football clubs are run.
Yeah.
But I didn't learn anything new from that interview.
No.
The first couple of minutes was Malky sitting going, so we had players that left the club, they either left the club on loan or they left the club permanently or they went on trial, and then we signed players that came in on loan. What?
Yeah.
I just didn't learn anything new. It all seemed very, very puff piece, and again, likely in a response to the fact that we didn't sign McCowan. But I don't think the club overall can be criticised for not signing McCowan. Because ultimately,
I agree.
Celtic came in for him, and there was only, as soon as there was noises about Celtic being in for him, and as soon as they sold Mikey Johnston as well, it was obvious they were going to go for him based on the fact that he's a homegrown player.
Scottish, yeah. Aye, and it fits the criteria for them for the Champions League spot as well. And yeah, no, I completely agree with what you've said. And for me, it just seemed like a puff piece. But what we'll do now is I'll move on to the listeners' questions, and I'll get your dinner off you first of all, if that's all right.
My dinner is I'm on a bit of a steak and eggs train at the minute. So it's purely steak, eggs, and tatties for me. I'm eating like a carnivore. Carnivores don't eat tatties. So I steak and eggs for my tea.
It's a very bulky, healthy dinner. I love it. Huge fan of that.
I'm getting off the calzones and the pizzas and that. It's not good for me.
You'll feel better for it. You'll feel better, that's for sure.
What are you having?
Do you know what? I can't remember.
Have you like prawn linguine or something?
Nah, it's not. Do you know what? Give me 5 seconds and I'll tell you exactly what it is.
It's 3 seconds more than what you normally get.
I'm having a gochujang mushroom stir fry with pak choi, sugar snaps, and jasmine rice.
We're on different ends of the spectrum here, Sean. So if you want to know what somebody with no kids has for their tea versus what somebody with kids has for their tea.
Yeah. So looking forward to it. Something a bit different actually, away from my pasta or my chicken and rice, although there is rice in there. So we'll see. We'll see what unfolds. But yeah, we'll move on to the rest of the listener questions. There was actually one specifically for Liam from Harvey. I'm going to get it up. It's in relation to other sporting events, because naturally after losing such a late goal at the weekend, maybe people just didn't want to hear about Hibs. But I'm going to kind of put a spin on it, and I'll get your take on it as well. So basically, Harvey's asked Liam what made him a fan. Ultimately, what made him a fan of UFC? What made him stay up for that? And I'll give Harvey Liam's response in a second. But what we spoke about it on this podcast before, what other sports we're interested in. What made you a fan of another sport, whether it be an event, whether it be a person, like a certain person? What attracted you to that another sport, and what was the sport?
I've got two. One, my second sport after football is snooker.
Okay.
Absolutely love snooker. I used to play it a lot when I was younger. Was in tournaments and that, but because my granddad was a snooker referee, and when I used to go to my granddad's every Friday, and they'd have like the East of Scotland Amateur Championships at the old, you might not remember it, the old Marco's.
Nah.
So Marco's pool hall that's in Fountain Bridge,
Yeah.
Toll Cross area.
Yeah.
That before it used to be like a multi-story. There was like Little Marco's, which was like effectively like a soft play upstairs, and they had like loads of American pool tables and that, and they had a wee set off snooker room. And so when my granddad was refereeing on a Friday, we would go and I would help him when I got taller, obviously, and I got a wee bit better at maths. I used to do the scoreboard for him to save him going back and forward doing it. So I snooker, and because my Stephen Hendry used to practice at my granddad's club, so my granddad worked behind the bar
Got you.
at Locarno Snooker Club in Slateford.
Yeah.
So again, I used to go there if I was going to my granddad's. I'd go there after school, so I'd have like 3-4 hours of battering balls about on the table. So Stephen Hendry used to practice at that club as well, so that was a wee bit of history. I used to stand on the wee box that he used to stand on when he played.
So getting back to Harvey's one, for all the snooker people, I'm sure they love that story, Craig.
But sorry, my other sport,
nice.
the other sport that I'm more interested in now is the NFL, and that's been more recently, and that's because of Red Zone. So if you're not a fan of the NFL and you don't know what Red Zone is, it's effectively Soccer Saturday,
but for NFL.
But with one guy, and they show you everything. So if there's a touchdown, if there's a turnover or whatever, and for somebody who didn't really understand the rules,
that helps you.
And it's like fucking 6 hours on a Sunday as well. It's quality.
If you get the opportunity, NFL soccer Sundays.
Basically, NFL Red Zone. It's really opened my eyes to how enjoyable the NFL can be.
Another sport that is obviously big in America is UFC, which is what Harvey's question is relating to. And they wanted to know what Liam's first card that he stayed up for. Harvey mentions that theirs was McGregor and Khabib, and I think obviously McGregor's brought a whole new level of supporters to that sport, and it was the same sort of similar for Liam in regards to him staying up for Diaz and McGregor when he lost, and then obviously the rematch and McGregor v Alcaraz. So
mine was like Brock Lesnar. So I used to watch.
Good for you.
I used to watch wrestling as a bairn, so when I knew that Brock Lesnar was in UFC, that turned my attention to that.
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, wrestling, man, what a sport. I used to watch that heavy growing up as well. John will kill me if I don't elaborate a little bit more on the dinner question. He's obviously posted the tweet with a Kensal out picture, as he seems to do to every other single tweet that he tweets to anything nowadays. So if that is content that you admire, hit John McIntosh up and give him a follow. James Kinnebra asking if we've finally found a working midfield three or Triantis, Quan and Newell, which again we've obviously spoke at great length as well. I like the fact that and I'm not comparing the midfield threes, of course I'm not, but I like the fact that you refer to when we had a 3-5-2 under Lennon and had success with a midfield three of McGeoch, 5A and McGinn, and you referred to it as a 6 and 2/8. So we now have another 6 and 2/8, so hopefully that can obviously grow over time as well.
Yeah.
Roddy Scott's mentioned that it feels like a defeat, obviously with Costin it's so late, but Triantis certainly looks like a player, proving doubters wrong. Quan looks like a real player as well. And your favourite person, Craig Gavdick, has came in with ultimately disappointing way to end the game, but surely as a support, we see shoots of encouragement. Midfield three were great. Defensively, we looked a little bit more assured with Triantis in front. And it said he looked immense. Triantis was Messi for a few seconds when he hit the bar. Well, I was going to use the comparison to Messi, but Messi would have finished that shot, hence why I went with Ronaldo.
Yeah, and also Messi was left-footed, so
yeah. Anyway,
do better.
And last question. So there wasn't too much this week, naturally, because of how the performance went. Billy, one of your other favourites, Craig, asked if we could potentially see us signing any free agents. Now, I feel like it's a really good question for once, Billy. So cheers. But more importantly, Malky mentions that at the end of his interview as well, and says that's something that we could potentially dip into over the next kind of coming weeks. Now, those Hibs fans that had a dream of us signing Stuart Armstrong can, put that to bed now that he's going to join Ryan Gauld over in America at Whitecaps. One, Craig, do you think we will dip into the free agent market? Either just your thoughts on it or potentially based on what Malky said. And two, do you have anyone in mind that we could potentially try and snap up?
If we hadn't assigned Triantis, I wouldn't have expected it, but one I would have wanted to pursue potentially would have been Ryan Jack. Again, for that sixth role, and again, we'll talk about characters. On the park, he's a bit of an arsehole, and I think that's what we lack, and we have lacked for a very long time. But obviously with the signing in Hector, we're so stacked in centre midfield already as it is. The only other position probably, and I think the name that a lot of folk would come up with would be Emiliano Marcondes.
Yeah.
Given that he's got his life of a visionary kind of series that he's putting out on YouTube and heavy Hibs references. I think in the first episode he acknowledged he was out of contract, but he wanted to stay within the Black Knights group.
Yeah.
Whether they're taking in Henry Davis and it was another matter,
and he said that the Black Knights have actively said to him that they want him to stay within the group. So it's not just a decision that he's referred to; it's one that the group have said that they want to do.
So that's probably the only area that I would imagine, because we're pretty, we the two Cadens, Obita, Iredale, Megwa, Lewis Miller were pretty set. Fullbacks, Iredale can cover in the middle. We've got him, Rocky, Ikpeteta and O'Hora for there. We've got about 10 centre mids. We've got obviously the 6 forwards that I've mentioned. So it's really only, for me, it would only be Marcondes that I think could fall into that category.
It's still quite a bloated squad if you think about it as well.
Well, you think you would not even touched on like Harry McCurdy, for example, who's still there. Nathan Mariah Welsh, another one.
Do you think these are the types of players that Malky was referring to in his interview as well, where he mentions that maybe it's the right player but the wrong movie? That's how he described it. Do you think it's Nathan Mariah Welsh, Luke Amos, Harry McCurdy, those types of players?
Aye, I mean you've got Jake Doyle Hayes, who's almost persona non grata at times.
Yeah.
Nohan Kenna, these guys that were, I think reading between the lines of that video with Malky, it was a case of they've been told they're not going to play. They had offers to go and play, and he made a pointed reference to, they've got contracts and we need to honour them, and we do. If Nohan Kenna is sitting on $3.5-4 grand a week, which is to be rumoured, why is he going to go somewhere for 1,500? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? He was given that contract by Hibs, and rightly or wrongly, fans are like, just go, get him out the club. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
That's not how it works. The contract was signed, Hibs need to honour it. If they decide not to go elsewhere and play football and take the money, that's entirely their prerogative.
Who are we to say otherwise? Completely agree.
But now I think the annoying thing is that they keep referencing this out of contract spree next summer. It keeps coming up and it keeps coming up. And we're going to get ourselves in a position where this time next year, when we're reviewing the transfer window, we're going to be talking about another rebuild. Because ultimately, the goalie's on loan, the 2 centre midfielders are on loan, and our centre forwards on loan.
Spine of our squad.
The spine of our team's all on loan, and then we've got our other centre forward who's already out on loan. And how is that going to look like when Dylan Venti comes back or when Jair comes back? So, it's disappointing. I think for me the money is secondary, but the players, like, if it was me, I'd want to go and play. But if I was going to get offered to go and play somewhere for 25% of what I'm getting now, I'll just turn up to train, maybe give me a game for the under 21s, and that's it.
Yeah, especially when you're, like you said, on hypothetically 3.5, you're training 4 or 5 hours, 5 days a week, and then ultimately getting the weekend off.
Aye, exactly.
I mean, I know it's not the mindset to have, but if I was getting paid 3 times my salary Do you know what I mean? Where I could, if I stayed in another role, common sense, isn't it? And like you said, we don't know the inner workings of how these decisions are made and why they're made and the ins and outs of how these deals are struck. So,
We might do
but
soon.
maybe we might do. We might do. With that being said, what we will now do is we will move on to the bit that I know Craig has certainly been looking forward to throughout this whole episode, and probably used to considering the result of the weekend. Last week we had the 1998 quiz, and now we have the 1999 quiz based on the fact that we are on episode 99. Now, no pressure, Craig, but one, did you listen last week? And two, if you did you do better than Liam?
No,
To know, right? That's
didn't
fine.
listen.
Cool. That's fine. I was quite because afterwards,
I
if you hadn't
adopt the
listened, I was going to
mantra.
ask you the same questions and see how you got on.
I adopt the mantra of if I'm not in it, I'm not interested.
So
Nah, I just didn't get
you've
into it.
you've mentioned already your era. I mentioned to Liam last week that the 1999 one is probably a little bit harder, or it certainly would be for someone like Liam, i.e. because of his age. So
And his intellect.
you said it, not me. However, I do still think that for someone of your high Hibernian football and IQ, that you could potentially get 4 out of 5, if not 5 out of 5 in this one. So play along at home. Let us know how you got on. If you didn't do great, keep your mouth shut. If you done well or done better than Craig, shout it for the rooftops. So yeah, Craig, similar to last week's theme, the quiz will be based on things that happened in the calendar year of 1999. Okay? So question 1, in February 1999, we signed the one and only Frank Sauzet.
Yep.
Who did he make his debut against?
Falkirk at Brockwell.
Bonus point for the score?
2-1 Hibs.
Yep. Well done. Great start. Said it with chest as well.
Yep.
Were you there?
I was there. I went to every single game that season. That was my first season as a season ticket holder.
Obviously, it was many, many moons ago now, but do you remember what kind of buzz, maybe not you, but maybe people around you that were older that had an understanding of who was turning up? What was it like then?
My granddad was buzzing. He was like, "We've signed a European Cup winner." And I'm like, "European Cup sound? What's that?" My first involvement with the European Cup was probably 6 months later when Man United won it in the last minute. But no, that was a great time because obviously I was what, so 99, I would have been 8. No, 7 turning 8, and it was just Hibs were winning every week, and we were winning 3-4-0 every week. And Russell Latapy I was watching him thinking, fucking hell, this is amazing. You had Pat McGinley scoring every week. Nyon was in love with Stevie Crawford as well as a striker, and a young curtain-headed Paul Hartley was running rampaging down the right wing as well.
Well, it's funny
no,
you
it was good.
mention the fact that Hibs are winning every week because that aligns with my next question. It takes me nicely on to question number 2. We had the League One in April, and we won the league by 23 points. From January to the end of the season, we won every single game apart from one, which we lost. You've alluded to it already. But I want to know who that one loss came against. I think it was like 14 games or something. It was like 12, 13, 14 games from January right through to the end of the season. So even after we won the league in April, we continued to win. But we only dropped points once. We lost one match. Who was that against?
Did we lose it after we'd won the league?
I would need to go and double check the date.
We won the league away at Hamilton. It was at Maryhill. They were playing at Partick's Ground. Fucking hell, that's a question.
I would have never got this.
I'm trying to think who was in the league at the time. We got beat off Stranraer at the start of the season.
Yep, that's correct.
We drew. Is it Clydebank? Got beat.
That's correct.
We got beat 1-0 at Bulkhead.
We got beat by Clydebank. That's correct.
Aye, because
Tremendous stuff, young man.
we drew we drew 2-2 with Clydebank at the start of that season because we started the season poor. We got beat off Stranraer at home.
Yeah,
and we drew 2-2.
results were iffy at the beginning.
I think that 2-2 game at Clydebank might have been Kevin Harper's last game for Hibs as well.
You mentioned last games for Hibs. A couple of players that came in and played for their first games for Hibs later that summer is what the question 3 relates to. Now, this should be cut and dry for you, someone like yourself. But I didn't know who was going to be on episode 99, so I have altered the quiz based on all participants of the Ramble. Question 3. Later that summer, we signed 2 Germans. Name them.
Dirk Lehmann and Matty Jack.
Correct. Question 4. Which former player came back to sign permanently in the summer of 1999 after they had a loan with the club in 1998? And if my dates are correct, they were on loan at the beginning of 1998, the calendar year. So it was the 97-98 season that they were on loan at us.
Grant Brebner.
Yep, that's correct.
He was on loan during the relegation season.
Yeah, so you're right, Grant Brebner. So your full marks so far, shop.
I don't think, do you know what? I don't think I'd have got that if you hadn't have said they were on loan at the start of 98.
All right, okay.
Because I was thinking they were on loan during the first division season.
Last question. Our last victory in 1998 was against who?
In 1998?
Sorry, 1999. Apologies. In 1999, who was our last game against? Our last victory, sorry. Who was it against and who scored the goal or goals?
The goals were scored by Dirk Lehmann, Frank Sawsey and Kenny Miller. And it was a 3-0 win at Tynecastle.
Otherwise known as the what derby?
The Millennium Derby.
That is correct. I had the question down and it named the team, but I knew fine well that you would get it, hence why I took the team's name out. So yeah, Craig, unsurprisingly, full marks for yourself.
Name
the
Hibs team?
No. The question originally was, our last victory in 1999 was against Hearts. What was the score and who scored? Because potentially, whether it was Mark or Liam or Ryan, might not have clicked that it was the Millennium Derby, because the Millennium Derby might have been mistaken for being in January, not 1999, hence the tripping up.
You see my face just light up there.
Yeah, I could see it. You knew straight away.
Every single one of them I've said with chest as well. Yep. And also, I know nobody can see it because we're audio only, but you've seen my hands. I've been accused of the old Google in the past. That's Rain Man territory for me. I'd probably even have a stab at the team, but we'll do that.
You can if you want. If you are confident enough to be able to list the starting 11 for the Millennium Derby to end us on tonight's episode.
I don't know if it could. Nah, I don't. I might be able to.
I have it in front of me.
Right. We'll go Nick Colgan in goals.
Yep.
Tom Smith. Sean Dennis. John Hughes.
Yep.
And I want to say Derek Collins.
Yep.
Right, okay. Sawsey.
Yep.
Grant Brebner.
Yep.
Matty Jack.
Incorrect.
Okay. Stuart Lovell.
Correct.
Dirk Lehmann.
Yep.
Mixu.
Yep.
So I'm missing one.
Yep.
I don't think Kenny Miller never started that night.
Nope.
Oh, Russell Latipi.
Yep, there you go. Good, mate. Love it. What a way to end the episode, eh? Talking about something positive about Hibs, which doesn't happen all too often, but very well done on the quiz, lad.
Thanks, mate.
If you've made it this far, everyone, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you joined in as well with the quiz and potentially guessing the starting 11 for those older listeners. I say older. I guess we kind of come into that bracket now in comparison to some of the listeners that we have. So, yeah, I hope you all enjoyed the episode. The Ramble have a busy couple of weeks ahead, but we will have episode 100 for you. As and when that is, we do not know what that will look like. Due to scheduling and stuff like that and things that we have on our plate. However, the Ramble will be back. We will have episode 100 out for you guys. And yeah, long may it continue up the Ramble. Thanks for joining me, Craig.
Cheers, mate.
Crack on. Bye.